This is He Knows Everything, bringing you that heat fart. We keeping a foot on the whoop, Lord Neeks. We keeping a foot on the whoop, Lord Neeks. And like the Tibetan sheriff that I am, man. Like the Siberian tiger that I am, I'm applying whoop on immediate pressure. Because pressure does whoop, eat person. Spikes, let's talk about it, man. We gotta talk about Vasiliy Lomachenko and the fact that Vasiliy Lomachenko has basically put himself in a position to where he gets a rematch with the Superduperhypejob variation. The Masayoshi Nakatani fight tells us as boxing fans everything we need to know about the delineation, the distinction, the gulf, and the separation that's associated with a one Vasiliy Lomachenko and a Superduperhypejob variation, and i.e. Teofimo Lopez. We know his name is Super because it basically means super. And we know it's duper because it means duper. We know it's a hype job because it means hype job. And we know it's a variation because that's what it is, a fucking variation. He's a super duper hype job variation, hence the vernacular and the term. Because Teofimo Lopez, in his defense against George Kambosos Jr., had every opportunity, every identity, every moment to show that he's a shining beacon. But what does he end up doing? He ends up showcasing that he's a false idol because he gets supposed COVID, but yet he's on family vacation with his father. It's the things that make you say, It's the things that make you say, But in his most cold-hearted, unadulterated, and cut-through telefashion, I think he realized the live game animal that George Kambosos Jr. was, and he didn't want to get exposed in his first title defense. This right here validates Superduperhypejob variation. It validates the hype. It validates the job. It validates the variation. It validates the fact that he's super duper at it. But what it also validates is the fact that Vasiliy Lomachenko did something that he wasn't able to do. And it speaks to what He Knows Everything always talks about when he says, and prediction king strikes, and the prediction king strikes, that the prediction king struck again in telling you guys that Vasiliy Lomachenko had a shoulder issue. This is very prevalent and key because we have to look at how he performed against Teofimo Lopez, the Superduperhypejob variation, and look at how he performed against Masayoshi Nakatani. A longer fighter, a lankier fighter, a guy that really is long and can cause problems, can cause fits, can cause issues. And he basically made him miss time and time again. This was the same fighter, because they say boxing triangle theories don't work, but it works in this instance. The same fighter that basically made the term Superduperhypejob variation famous. He basically enlarged the schnauzer of Teofimo Lopez plenty of times throughout the fight, using his jab, using his reach. Well, that jab and reach could not find Vasiliy Lomachenko because Vasiliy Lomachenko had to do a highway robbery, man. You see, when Bob Arum activates old car salesman, aka Shiesty motherfucker status on you, you're basically disarmed. It's called disarming of the detriments, meaning you're basically showcasing the lack of ability that you used to have, the fullness thereof that you cannot show, the similitude that you are showing in that instance, because everything else has been crippled, everything else has been hindered, everything else has been handcuffed. Because the identity of that has taken place, you're in a precarious situation where you really cannot go off the way you want to. We've seen this happen plenty of times with Manny Pacquiao when Bob Arum wanted to prove a point with him. We've seen it happen plenty of times with Oscar De La Hoya when Bob Arum wanted to prove a point. He tried with Floyd. Floyd was like, I'm not doing no pay to lose. This is not no Deontay Wilder situation here. I'm not doing no denting of the damn skull because I'm a black fighter. Black fighters don't come back from pay to lose. Great White Hopes, freaking, AARPs like Manny Pacquiao, these motherfuckers can come back. And now, Vasiliy Lomachenko is not a great white hope, but to a lot of boxing fans that are Vasiliy Lomachenko fanboys, he is a great white hope. We gotta basically debunk that misnomer. Vasiliy Lomachenko ain't no damn Floyd Mayweather. He's never on that fucking level. Nobody can be Floyd. I mean, there's only one fighter that's an airfield fighter in today's game that proven that he's the next airfield fighter, and that's Earl the True Spence. But he's Earl the True Spence. Even he's not Floyd Mayweather. He's Earl the True Spence. But he's an airfield fighter. He's a translucent and a transparent image, nevertheless. And I'm going to talk about it in another video where Vasiliy Lomachenko goes ahead of him, but he has a loss. When you have basically a minor setback for a major comeback, you cannot usurp a guy who's undefeated. That shit just doesn't happen in boxing. This is where the Great White Hope scenario takes place. I'm going to talk about Teddy Atlas and his nonsensical ways on how he shot up Vasiliy Lomachenko over Earl the True Spence. And this is where the double standards that's associated with boxing in of itself speaks volumes of what it is. Black fighters are not treated the same. This is why I'm so mad with the fact that Deontay Wilder actually forgot this. And he basically allowed himself to take a paid to fucking lose knowing this. I mean, come on. How you know this stuff and then you still do a paid to fucking lose? Who does that? I mean, it speaks volumes of your lack of understanding, your lack of seeing things for what it is. Black fighters don't come back from shit like this. But if Vasiliy Lomachenko can come back, obviously, them shooting him above Earl the True Spence, that's a problem. And I'm going to speak against that. Just because I don't have a problem with Vasiliy Lomachenko, that doesn't mean he gets the right to shoot up over Earl the True Spence. Earl the True Spence is #1 pound for pound. I could argue that shit down with any fucking body. When you don't lose and you're fighting heavyweight lifters and you come back from a car crash and you take on Danny Garcia, and Vasiliy Lomachenko fights Masayoshi Nakatani. Masayoshi Nakatani is not on the same level from a upper echelon standpoint as Danny Garcia and welterweight. I mean, come on, let's not even entertain that shit. But let me get back to the context of what I'm talking about here, because even that shit is starting to piss me off. But anyways, Vasiliy Lomachenko bounced back. He bounced back from a highway robbery. He bounced back from a pay-to-lose situation. He bounced back basically from boxing, judging, gifting decisions. Because when you fight the way that Teofimo Lopez fought against Vasiliy Lomachenko, you don't walk away with the belt. You didn't do enough to win. And it is controversial. You got to run it back. We know that. And that's exactly what Vasiliy Lomachenko would have done, because that would have been the right thing to do. But you can't definitively say that Vasiliy Lomachenko won that fight, when in actuality, he did not win the fight. I mean, you can't say that Teofimo Lopez won the fight, in actuality, he didn't fucking win the fight. It was one of those fights where I felt Vasiliy Lomachenko did enough to get the fucking job done. And when you have that instance, the belts go back to the champion, and then you have a rematch. That would have been the fair thing to do, but you're dealing with Top Rank Strange, you're dealing with Bob Arum, you're dealing with WWE's type of shit, where contracts are laid out on basically, this is what the three-pronged monster of economics, politics, and pugilism is going to be prior to these fighters actually stepping into the ring. This is why boxing is a three-pronged monster of economics, politics, and pugilism. Because there's an economical and a political part of boxing that happens before these fighters step into the ring. We've heard fighters say the sport is dark, it's ugly. They pay us to lose. There's a lot of stuff that happens behind closed doors and people don't pay attention. Usually when it's a fighter that no one's paying attention for, they're not really a big name like that, no one is really clamoring to listen to that fighter. Or if it's a situation where it don't even got to be a little fighter's name, it just got to be a situation where we're talking about someone who people don't really care too much for. Could be a big fucking name, but they're polarizing. Floyd has talked about it, he's polarizing. Andre Ward has talked about it, polarizing. Double standards that's associated with boxing. Earl the True Spence has talked about it, polarizing. See, if it's a fighter, the Charlo brothers have talked about it, polarizing. But let Canelo Alvarez come out and say some shit like that. Let Sergey Kovalev say some shit like that. I'm getting to a point here. Vasiliy Lomachenko came out and said it, and everybody jumped on that shit. But he was right in saying it. I'm just showcasing to you guys that when somebody like that says it, or when Naoya Inoue talked about the WBC French fry belt, when black fighters were saying it, nobody was paying attention to them. When Deontay Wilder and them was saying it, they were like, man, fuck you. You need to fight Dillian White, blah, blah, blah. When Naoya Inoue said it, you see that fucking belt is a French fry belt. We know racism is associated with boxing. I'm throwing all of this so that you guys can see, because that shit pissing me off with this whole Vasiliy Lomachenko shooting over Earl the True Spence. But I'm gonna get back on the context of this shit. The super duper hype job variation is boxed in the corner. He has to fight Vasiliy Lomachenko because Vasiliy Lomachenko's TKO on Masayoshi Nakatani and the lack thereof of what he was able to do. Teofimo Lopez is the biggest hype job boxing has ever seen. There's nothing about Teofimo Lopez that tells you that he's a superstar. The only thing that he is a man that knows a lot but masters fucking nothing. That's what he is. He's a master of many things. He's basically a person that does a lot of fucking things, but he's a master of nothing. Because when we look at Teofimo Lopez, that's what his boxing ability is all about. He does a lot of fucking things in the ring, but there's nothing that you could sit there and look at him and say that he masters from a pugilistic standpoint. He does not have the best defense. He does not have the best guard. His power is fucking overrated, because if his power was everything that you guys said that it was, he should have knocked out Vasiliy Lomachenko. And Vasiliy Lomachenko in that first fight, highway robbery or not, he was respecting this motherfucker too much. There was times in the fight where Vasiliy Lomachenko, you could see the look on his face. He wanted to tell Bob Arum, fuck you, I'm just going to win this fight. And he was starting to do that shit in the second half, but he pulled back. He fucking pulled back. And then that shoulder injury on top of that shit, I mean, it was just, that's why when I looked at that fight, I was shaking my head, because I was like, Vasiliy Lomachenko, if he was on his shit, there was no way the super duper hype job variation would win this fucking fight. And then we look at what he did to Masayoshi Nakatani. I love the way that Bob Arum enacted that brilliance, the genius. The old senile did not find him this day, because what he did was he tied a fighter to both guys, and based on their performance, he boxed the super duper hype job variation into a rematch. And it was masterful. It was beautiful the way he did that shit. Now we're gonna get the rematch that we expect as fight fans, because Bob Arum is basically told the super duper hype job variation that you're not gonna make the money that you want to make unless you do the rematch with Vasiliy Lomachenko. You have no choice. And if he moves up to 140 and he does all this other weird shit, he's gonna have to start back from scratch. You're not a champion no more. You're a champion at 135. You don't start back from scratch at 135. At 135, this is where you have your bullshit super duper hype job variation status. Now you need to prove if it's validated or not. Beat Vasiliy Lomachenko and watch me put respect on your name. If you can do that, then we don't have a conversation here. If you can do that, what is there to fucking talk about? If you can do that, what are we even entertaining here? When it's all said and done, if Teofimo Lopez is everything that you guys say that he is, then fight Vasiliy Lomachenko, man. But it's not then fight. It's actually going to happen, because the super duper hype job variation fucked up. This is where hustling for dummies come into play. I have to ride a little bit on this one, because he screwed himself over by basically doing this whole COVID clause, because he didn't want to get exposed by George Kambosos Jr. Now that fight gets shelved. It's not going to happen anymore. Bob Arum's going to push for this super duper hype job variation to rematch Vasiliy Lomachenko, because Bob Arum don't play. When you make a promoter lose money, they fucking own you. This is a Jerry Eller to Easy E situation. This is how it's always been with Bob Arum, with any fighter that's in top rank. That's why it's called top rank strange, because when you screw up with Bob Arum and you give Bob Arum a clause, the only way that you can make Bob Arum not really mess with you is you can't be losing. But even then, even when you're not losing, if you are boring and you are not marketable like a Terrence Bud Crawford, Bob Arum's still gonna fuck with you. He's just basically not gonna put you on fight cards, and he's not gonna promote you the way that he wants to promote you, because you're not doing anything for his favor. Like when Terrence Bud Crawford didn't take the nosedive, against Kell Brook. Bob Arum actually wanted him to lose that fucking fight. But Kell Brook ended up being the one to take the nose fucking dive. If Bob Arum got that loss from Terrence Crawford, he would have propped up Terrence Crawford in another super fight with Kell Brook. He would have been able to get a rematch. This is how Bob Arum works. Top Rank has always worked this way. They love to do this whole rematch, trilogy, and courtlet type of situation because they just lazy with the shit. They're not creative. And this is another instance of it with the Vasiliy Lomachenko versus the Teofimo Lopez fight. It's going to be basically another instance of these two guys going at it. Bob Arum gets the last laugh at the end of the day. And Vasiliy Lomachenko gets to expose the super duper hype job variation for what he is, a super duper hype job variation. And then we get to stop hearing Teofimo Lopez Sr. run his rabbit ass mouth. I don't know about y'all, man, but put it in the comment section. Who's tired of Teofimo Lopez Sr. running his mouth? I know I'm fucking tired of it. I'm fucking tired of even seeing Teofimo Lopez, let alone him being a fucking boxer. Y'all let me fucking know. Because this kid right here is not what you guys say that he is. I don't have a problem with him as a person. I just have a problem with the way he moves as a fighter. When you saying that you want to fight Vasiliy Lomachenko and you want to prove yourself, proving yourself doesn't stop because you want a super duper hype job variation status. It continues to prove itself by you doing what you're supposed to do in the boxing ring. And if you're not doing that shit and you're not stepping up to the plate and showcasing the people that you are the fighter that you say that you are, then why are we even wasting our time? Why are we even wasting our energy? Why are we even paying attention to your rabbit ass? I mean, this is really what it boils down to. And the reason why I said all of the things that I said, because I didn't even anticipate this video being this fucking long, is because we're dealing with a guy that literally turned the lightweight division into literal shit. Because of what he did to the lightweight division, it is no longer a prominent division in boxing. The lightweight division has turned into cockamamie nonsense. And because of this, we need Vasiliy Lomachenko to have that rematch to re-establish somewhat, because it's not going to be what it used to be, but to re-establish somewhat in a lore, somewhat a prestige, and somewhat what we would say a standard at lightweight division, which would then set up Teofimo Lopez to get knocked the fuck out by Gervonta Tate Davis. That's the cold-hearted. That's the unadulterated. That's the cutthroat two-tailor fashion. That's what I want. I know the holes that Vasiliy Lomachenko has in his fight game that I know that Tank can fucking exploit. I know that. That's why I want Vasiliy Lomachenko to beat this super duper hype job variation so that he can actually step into the ring with Gervonta Tate Davis and then get literally tanked. That's the cold-hearted. That's the unadulterated. That's the cutthroat two-tailor fashion. I keeps the foot on the whoop. The Knicks. I keeps the foot on the whoop. The Knicks. When it's all said and done, Teofimo Lopez has done what he knows everything told you guys that he was going to do. He turned 135 to shit. And you need Vasiliy Lomachenko to get that get back so that he can reinstitute basically standards back to 135. Prominence back to 135. And basically a lifeline back to 135. Like the show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. This is He Knows Everything. Check it out.